To open the conversation today, I brought some thoughts on who owns AI for creative work. I don't normally write comments, but I did in this case and will rely on them. Thanks again to Kalani, Nathan, Laura, Harrison, Barry, the whole team for inviting me to make this offering to the collective conversation of how we think about AI and creative work. In the summer and fall of 2023, a number of authors, including the comedian Sarah Silverman and the mystery writer John Grisham, sued OpenAI and other companies for copyright infringement. Those companies were using creators' work as training data for their large language models, and the companies were benefiting from value that they had not created. This question of who owns AI is one of the greatest political and economic questions of our time, and it points to larger underlying questions of how we organize ourselves, both as a body politic and as an economy. I believe the recent history of organizing the arts has something to teach us about this question. And so I want to share and offer some stories and cases and research from that. You don't need to be inherently interested in art to look at these stories. I think that art is important as a proxy for things that are of value, where we agree they're of value, but we may not agree what they're worth, and for things where the value is complicated to understand and is only emergent over time. For example, in 1968, an artist named Takis went to the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and he physically removed his sculpture from an exhibition because he did not like how the curator had displayed it. This gesture of artist agency led to the formation of an activist group called the Art Workers Coalition. And a key output of that coalition was what is called the Artist Contract, which was published in 1971. Both an experimental and a working document, the Artist Contract gave artists a number of decision-making rights in their work after it was sold. It's best known, however, for granting them a financial interest, 15% of the increase in the price of the work when it's sold in the secondary market. 2 years after the publication of the contract, there's a very famous auction in which the collectors Robert and Ethel Scull sold a work by the artist Robert Rauschenberg that they had collected in 1958 for $900 and sold in 1973 for $85,000. Rauschenberg went to the auction, allegedly shoved Mr. Scull, and said that he should have received some of that benefit. Although the artist contract was mainly successful conceptually and not financially, it did become the seed for a lot of more recent experimentation with the blockchain-based platforms that sell non-fungible tokens. Some of those, including Monograph and Feral File, have cited the artist contract as the rationale for granting creator share or resale royalties in work. But I think there's a much more basic idea at play here. And this idea is that if you're making a work of art in any field, you are not just going from a known point A to a known point B, but inventing point B. You are taking risk and investing resources inside the point A world to create things of value that you don't know if you'll be able to make. And as such, it makes sense that you would have a share in the upside that your work helps to create. And so I asked this as a basic question: what if, in the case of Robert Rauschenberg, he had been paid 10% less when his work first sold, but then owned 10% equity when it resold? So the $900 price in 1958, if he was only getting paid $450, if he got paid $90 less and then owned 10% of the $85,000 at auction. I've modeled this empirically, collaborating with Roman Kreuzl and looking at early Jasper Johns and Robert Rauschenberg works, as well as those works of a cohort of their peer artists. And we found that if Johns and Rauschenberg had retained 10% ownership in the works that they made in the late 1950s and early 1960s, they would have outperformed the US stock market as represented by the S&P 500 by up to 1,000 times. That's a 20 to 40% return every year from 1970 to 2005. We could debate what this means. Johns and Rauschenberg are art stars, so we could say that this is the ceiling and not the floor. But what it really points to is that we need to have a conversation about the economics of creative work, the difficulty of the original research and development required of artists and others, and also the way in which this is part of a sense of common purpose, a sense of societal progress and the public good, not only of individual artistic success. So what I think that we're lacking here is a way of thinking about how creativity benefits all of society, but requires individual risk, and how we might map this structurally as a problem of both governance and economic design. This picture is a work by Clarissa Towson that was shown at MCA Denver a couple of years ago about this idea of collective ownership, something that dates to the ideals of investment in exploration of outer space, something that has been subsequently privatized. As many of you may know, OpenAI itself was founded in 2015 as a nonprofit. It was around 2019 that OpenAI incorporated a for-profit subsidiary to be able to take private investment, and through that entered into a multi-billion-dollar partnership with Microsoft. The for-profit arm has a capped profit structure so that above a certain level, the proceeds go back, but they go back to the nonprofit. So the board of the nonprofit oversees OpenAI. OpenAI, the for-profit practice, functions underneath that. But this question really has to do with how democracy and private enterprise interact, who makes decisions, and then who benefits. Does a private nonprofit benefit, or does everyone benefit? And even if each of us is a very small input to the model, in fact, all of us together are vital for the model. And so the way we think about value individually and collectively has an opportunity to rise to meet the moment, and to invite the design of cooperative structures, new governance models, more optimistic and nuanced political and economic structures of our technological moment. And so with that, I offer the question, who should own AI? Thank you.